Community Conversation from the International Town Gown Association, ITGA. I'd like to welcome you here to this webinar today. I am Melissa Selesky from Rutgers University in rainy New Brunswick, New Jersey, and I am co-chair of the Professional Development Committee with ITGA's Executive Director, Beth Bagwell. So this series is designed to bring viewpoints on topics for both educational and institutional perspectives, as well as community and government perspectives. Today's presentation is the third of 3 topics that we're presenting this spring. Previous topics this spring have included move-in and move-out days, Party Smart programs, and this is the third for the spring, community service days. Upcoming topics that we have planned include alcohol harm reduction, housing, and managing large-scale unsanctioned events. Say that 3 times. The summer and fall schedule will be announced in late May, with the first one taking place in June. So please be on the lookout for them. And be sure to spread the words to others at your institution that these webinars are a free resource provided to ITGA members. Today's topic, Community Service Days, addresses the core competencies of community, well-being, and relationships. We'll hear perspectives from Texas A&M and University of Georgia, as well as from a county official from the Athens-Clarke County Unified Government in Georgia, who often partners with UGA on outreach programming. The presenters will tell you how they've developed their outreach days, some lessons learned, as well as how they evaluate outcomes for both schools and the community. After the presentation, then it's your turn. The chat will be turned off, but we invite you to submit all your questions through the Q&A for your panelists as they come to you. We'll hold these questions till the end of the presentation, but then we'll be anxious to jump in. I've seen the presentations. We're going to have some questions. I can't wait to get into it. So let me do some introductions. First, Joshua Podvin. Josh serves as the Assistant Director for the Office of Service Learning at University of Georgia, focusing on community partnerships and engagement. He supports the Engage Georgia platform, oversees the PSO Student Scholar Program, coordinates communication and support of community partners, special projects, days of service, and helps to promote reciprocity and partnership with the local community. He previously served as the experienced UGA coordinator, facilitating educational field trips to the UGA campus for all 13,000 students in the Clarke County School District. He's a graduate of the Public Service and Outreach Vivian H. Fisher Leadership Academy and the Public Service and Outreach Facilitation Academy. Cecile Riker is the Community Engagement Coordinator for Athens-Clarke County Unified Government's Public Information Office in her hometown of Athens, Georgia. She's worked for ACC Gov for 12 years, including several early internships that helped her get plugged into the community as a student. She's a proud double dog, holding a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in public administration from University of Georgia. And finally, Shelby Hearn recently joined Texas A&M University in Galveston as their new Assistant Director of Community Standards from Texas A&M University College Station, where she oversaw the big event, also known as the nation's largest student-run service project. With a Bachelor of Arts in Communication from Stephen F. Austin State University and a Master's in Science in Educational Administration with an emphasis on Student Affairs Administration and Higher Education from Texas A&M, she's committed to lifelong learning. In addition to her professional role, she's pursuing a PhD in Educational Administration and Higher Ed at Texas A&M. Welcome, panelists. Shelby's going to get us started today. So, Shelby, take it away.
We'll circle around and give Shelby some time to sort things out. I'm going to cross my fingers we don't run into the same challenge on our end. Let's see here. How does that look for folks? Does that look
good? Yes.
Okay, great. I'm gonna give my caveat first and foremost. I said I'm in a hotel, and so if the Wi-Fi goes out or if my children run up early from the pool, just beware there may be some small children popping in here. So Cecile and I are going to present together. We work collaboratively. So when I popped this open, Cecile had done a great job of kicking us off and creating a PowerPoint slide. But, I work at the University of Georgia, and the blue and blue color scheme doesn't work as well for me. So I had to go and do the red and black color scheme just so I could get my UGA representation in here. But it's a privilege to be here today and to get to share with you all. I'm going to chat a little bit about the way that I get to engage with community partners and the types of events that we do. A little bit of what might be unique from my perspective or the space that I'm coming from at the university. I think Shelby will talk about things from a student affairs lens and that large scale event planning. I'm going to come at this in a little different angle and how I build partnerships through service learning and some smaller scale volunteer opportunities, and how that has allowed us to grow to some larger partnerships in the community, some long-standing community partnerships, and I think a really sustainable opportunities for faculty at the University of Georgia. So my role at the office, as Melissa said, is as the assistant director. I really work on building community partnerships between the local community and our faculty at the university that want to host service learning classes. So there's a great place where the classroom and the community come together. And so the service learning, really core at the center of service learning, is that idea of putting students into spaces where they get to apply what they're learning in a real world setting. So we're big advocates of this. I'll talk a little bit shortly about the numbers and the impact of that work. But I think many of our students find that getting their hands on things, whether it's in a large scale volunteer opportunity or in a service learning course, is a more effective way for them to test the knowledge that they're getting. So where we may differ a little bit in like an academic capacity on a volunteer engagement or a large scale event is that this is connected to course concepts initially. So we have academic content being applied in a real world setting. Some other key components, as you can see here, is that the students are reflecting on that work that they're doing. It's for course credit, which is a key piece. And then there's this idea of mutual benefit, which I think is what has allowed us to build some of these really great volunteer opportunities and then large scale events to be really successful in the long run. So this is that service learning lane that we're coming from, but I'll talk also in a little bit about how these partnerships have allowed us to do some faculty and staff days of service as well. So from our lens, we have over 250 courses that are connected to service learning in all of our schools and colleges. You can see that these opportunities, we have a ton of students taking advantage of those, and that those students are making a significant impact in our community. So that's here from the classroom, and these opportunities have given students, a real chance to put their skills to test in a real world environment. So I'm going to slide forward one more. So when we talk about service learning partnerships, this is an article that I talk to faculty about how they build these relationships, and they talk about putting themselves in a space where they can connect with these partners, that they can build on existing relationships. And that's what I'm going to talk a lot about here as we talk about our faculty and staff PSO week of service. So we started the week of service. Oops, sorry, jumped ahead here. We started the week of service in 2015. It's been a long-standing day of service where we partner with over 20 partners across the community. You can see some of the different opportunities that we've had here over the years. We have had work days with our local diaper bank. We've worked at local elementary schools, and our participants have put in over 3,700 hours worth of service in the local community. We've had faculty and staff that have volunteered at these places over, it started out as initially as a day of service, and then we've grown to a week of service in order to be able to accommodate all of the interest in our community. So We do this work across the state. So this has really been an opportunity for our faculty and staff to come together and to connect outside of their workspace and find a place that they can give back in their local community. So one of the things with the work that we do in our in-service learning, but outside of that in public service and outreach, is we're connected across the state of Georgia. So we have friends that are in communities across the state or in at the coast, and they get to participate in this large-scale day of service that connects folks across the state from different disciplines and from different parts of our public service and outreach units to actually work together and have an impact in their greater community. So I'm going to just give a quick shout out to some of the reflections that have here for our folks that have participated, as they get that real chance to connect with folks outside of their day-to-day unit when they're behind a desk or they're maybe doing the work that they do, that they get to give back in their own local community. And they get to connect in a way that lets them feel like they're making an impact in our local space. So now I'm going to transition it over to Cecile, where she can talk a little bit about the work that we collaborate on some larger scale community partnerships.
Yes, hi everybody. I'll just quickly echo the other panelists and say I'm so glad to be here. Thank you to Josh for sort of bringing me into this presentation. I'm pretty new to ITGA, so I'm glad to be here, glad to learn from Shelby too about what they're doing out in Texas, and glad to be able to talk to you about our Athens MLK Day of Service. We're back in the blue color scheme here. You know, we're going to stick blue for the rest of the presentation. We'll have a little bit notes about UGA in a moment, but as was mentioned before, I work for Athens-Clarke County in our public information office, and my role is focused on community engagement. So I do a lot of support for our departments and engagement work that they're doing in the community, and then I also represent Athens-Clarke County in a variety of different ways, whether it's on planning committees for events like this, working with community partners like Josh does in his role. So it's a very varied position, which I love. But one of the things I will say, I got involved with the Athens Martin Luther King Day of Service in a previous role that I was in with Athens-Clarke County. I was working with our stormwater division, and they have historically hosted a volunteer project as part of MLK Day. So through that, I joined the planning committee and was on the committee in that role for several years. And then when I transitioned into my current role, like, hey, this event totally fits under sort of this larger umbrella of community engagement. So I've stayed on the planning committee in a different capacity, but that's sort of my history with this event. So go ahead, Josh, to our next slide. I included a few background information slides to give you guys a little bit of context. If you're not familiar with Athens, Athens-Clarke County, something I like to point out is we're one of only 9 consolidated governments in the entire country. We're a city-county government in one. City and county have been around since the 1800s when some land was purchased to develop a university, and a small little university that no one's really heard of. But the city and the county was unified in 1991. We are a small county land-wise. We're 122 square miles, and we're the smallest county in the entire state of Georgia. So as you can imagine, with a large university here in our presence, we've got a lot of students in a small area with a decently high population. So if you flip to the next slide, I've got some UGA stats, Josh. And feel free to add to this as the UGA pro here, but UGA, oldest state chartered university in the country, a lot of buildings, owns a lot of property here in Athens-Clarke County, and there's about 40,000 students that feed into our about 130,000 population here in Athens-Clarke County. Highly ranked university, wins lots of awards, wins lots of sports games, which I won't go into detail here. And you can go to the next slide. So demographic wise, we're pretty diverse in Athens-Clarke County. As I mentioned, we've got about 128,000 people, a predominantly white community. We've got folks of color. We've got a pretty large Hispanic community. And then if you flip to the next slide, Josh, I just put up the demographics for UGA too, which differ slightly from Athens-Clarke County. And this was just really to give you a little bit of background on sort of what dynamics are between our community members and students. We've got some differences here among these demographics. You can go to the next slide. So with sort of that background in mind, what I'm primarily here to talk about is our Martin Luther King Day of Service in Athens, which I think is a little bit unique when we're talking about campus community service days, because this really started as a truly organic community effort that has grown and has really gotten a lot of involvement from students over the years. But it really started as this just a group of folks that came together and wanted to do some sort of volunteer service on Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. So they did a cemetery cleanup in 2002, and over the past 21 years, if you count 1 year that we had to cancel because of weather, this event has grown in scale, in size, in who's involved, and it's pretty incredible. We have a wide variety of partners that help plan this event, which I think is one of the strengths of how we build relationships through this event. We have a lot of government representation on our planning committee. As you can see, we've got our law enforcement folks. We have some nonprofit partners that are represented, our local school district, some private entities, hospital, things like that. And then, of course, Josh came on board from UGA several years ago. I don't remember the exact year. We have community members who serve on the planning committee that helps put this together every year. And that really gives us a great perspective, cross-discipline perspective when we're planning this event. So to give you guys an idea of sort of when this happens, we have MLK Day in January, of course. So we have this big day of service towards the beginning of the year, but the planning for that event starts typically for us in August. We get our group of partners, planning partners together as part of this service day where we are sending volunteers out in the community to a variety of different project sites. We have nonprofit partners and schools, which we'll talk about a little bit more, host projects. We send volunteers out to those sites on this day of service, but we typically also have a kickoff event in the morning before that service happens. So we start sort of logistically planning for that, usually around September. We open up a call for projects to community partners in October. We gather sort of information from them about what kind of projects they want to host. Then we also do a call for sponsors, which I'll touch on briefly at the end. We really couldn't do this without some private partnerships, business sponsorships that support this event financially. So we put out a call for those in November, and then we open sort of a wide call for volunteers, community and student volunteers in December, January, which is a tough time, I will say, being in the holiday season to recruit student volunteers primarily as they go home for almost a month. To give you an idea of the impact, here's some stats from just back until 2017. And again, this event has been going on for longer, but I just pulled numbers that I could find easily. And we've had our number of project sites has grown over the years. It fluctuates year to year, but we've had anywhere from 600 volunteers, or I think fewer than that, 600-ish volunteers to over 1,000. And again, this is community members and students. Some folks from even out of town come and volunteer at this event year after year. The number of service sites we host every year has grown greatly. We started sort of with like 15 to 18. Well, really, we started with 1 and grew to that. And then now we're up to about 25 to 30 sites every year that host projects simultaneously on this one day. They're pretty impressive.
Do you mind if I chime in real quick, Cecile?
Yeah,
I was gonna add, and I glossed over this on the part. Sorry, my phone was blowing up, so I was like, oh my gosh, my children are causing a scene downstairs, I'm sure. I wanted to add, I glossed over our Engage Georgia page, which is the Give Pulse platform, which we leverage to manage a lot of these events on campus, but really has been a tool that has enabled me to connect well with community partners and be of value, I think, to the MLK Planning Committee, because I know for Cecile, it was easy to pull information starting in 2017, because that's when I joined the committee and we started leveraging Give Pulse as a volunteer management tool. And I'll say that I think it's also what has enabled us to have the volume of sites that we have. I think prior to these days, there may have been fewer sites with larger numbers of volunteers, which Cecile and I often go back and forth on what would be a simpler strategy in managing events with fewer sites and larger numbers of volunteers versus lots of small sites that give really hands-on opportunities with really great partners. And GivePulse is a tool that lets you do that because it automatically sends those reminders, it captures those hours, you get feedback from the volunteers. And so I just wanted to put that in there since I had skipped over that a little bit, is that it's a really great tool for me as a university representative, going out and being able to connect with partners and offer this to them. And then for me to help manage a large scale event with the community where Cecile and I can partner in that space. So, all right, I'll pass it back over to you.
Josh, can I just interject? Maybe you could drop a link for GivePulse and oh, we don't have the chat open, but maybe you can share that at some point for those.
I'll share it over with you, and we can share this presentation as well, so we can folks can follow up with questions.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, huge shout out to GivePulse, which Josh introduced me as someone who is working with volunteers but didn't have sort of a formal platform to do so. And there's a little plug for GivePulse at the end when I talk about tools. So I don't think we're quite there yet. There might be one more slide before I get there, Josh. But this was just sort of a shout out to the types of organizations that we've hosted projects with: schools, nonprofit organizations, different government departments, our animal shelter, parks and trails, cemeteries. That's another big one. And you probably didn't memorize every name on the list when Josh had up his slide of organizations that hosted projects for his PSO week of service, but there's a lot of crossover. And I think part of that is due to the fact that Josh and I are working with these organizations through the year. On MLK Day specifically, we've got relationships with them already. So if we need to tap into them for another type of service project, like Josh has existing relationships with them through service learning opportunities. So it's just a great way to stay connected with folks and work with familiar faces as well. So large variety.
And we've found that these are people that are really great site hosts, right? They're responsible. So again, I think as you're gonna think about a large scale volunteer day or even a small scale volunteer day, for us as service learning, working with students in a classroom, we want to send them out to a site where they're going to have a really meaningful and impactful experience. And we know that they've got a first aid kit, and they've got, a place for people to park, and they welcome the volunteers, and they're going to track who shows up and who doesn't show up. These are sites that consistently show up in a meaningful way for us. Right. And that is why you see that overlap, as Cecile said, is that they're the ones that we know are going to provide a good experience for community members and students alike.
Yeah, very good point. I think one more slide maybe that I had, Josh, was just about some helpful tools that we use as part of this event, which we've mentioned GivePulse. That has been a huge help just in being basically a hub for our data, all of the contact information, all of the details about each individual site all lives in one space, and that can help us the way we communicate with folks about their volunteer service. So really, really helpful. Athens-Clarke County as an organization as a whole has actually adopted use of GivePulse for all various departments' volunteer needs, basically because we were using it for events like the MLK Day of Service. So really helpful. I also briefly mentioned the business partnership side of things. That has been really helpful for us in raising funds. We purchase t-shirts for volunteers. We purchase supplies and snacks for the sites and food for our kickoff event. It also allows our business community to get plugged in to this kind of opportunity. And I will just give a shout out. One of our sponsors last year was UGA's Athletic Association. They financially sponsored this event, and in turn had a group of student athletes volunteering as part of this day of service alongside community members too. So really great to have those partnerships. We have a local tool shed, tool loaning program here where we get all of our tools for these projects. They have thousands of tools that they loan out to any community really project, but we rely on them heavily to supply our sites with what they need to get these kinds of projects done. I've added a note on here about the national ML. As some of you probably know, Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service is a national initiative under the umbrella of AmeriCorps. And they have resources that, you know, whether it's publicity, they have sort of social media toolkits, all sorts of things. If you're thinking about starting this kind of service day in your community on this specific holiday, that could be a helpful place to start. And then lastly, I haven't touched on this a ton, but as an organization, well, the MLK Day of Service here in Athens, it's planned by a planning committee. We are not exactly a formal part of Athens-Clarke County Unified Government. We have a lot of planning partners that are government staff. We rely on a lot of resources from Athens-Clarke County, but we're not formally an initiative of Athens-Clarke County Unified Government. So in the past, we've had different nonprofit organizations be like our fiscal sponsor and that would hold our funds that we raised. And years ago, there was an organization that was sort of like the clearinghouse for volunteering in our community. It was a nonprofit organization. They were sort of the owner, I would say, of this event. That organization folded and not folded, I guess, was enveloped with our local United Way organization, who then sort of moved from being a volunteer hub to more of like the funding side of things. So we are not firmly anchored under Athens-Clarke County or a nonprofit. So with that said, it is helpful to have sort of a champion for this event that is sort of the owner. And maybe we can hit on this a little more in the Q&A, but that's been a challenge for us. So helpful tool to have. And that's it.
Terrific. Thank you so much. So many questions I have. So, but we're going to hear from Shelby. Let's see how you do. Back to the same, huh?
Okay, we're hoping that this one will work. Can y'all see the full screen?
Same thing, about 2/3.
Really?
Yeah.
What in the world is going on?
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Is it there?
There you go.
Okay, we're
All
working.
right, let her go.
I love that. Okay, so thank you so much for the lovely introductions, and also Cecile and Josh for your awesome work. Y'all are doing amazing things out there, and so it's really great just to hear all the different initiatives that y'all are doing, and how this is like connected across the nation. So that's super cool. So howdy, as I already said, I think that you might want to hear it from the students because they do say it the best. So this is our big event at Texas A&M University this past year, March 23rd. All right, so you can see that is at our kickoff event that we hosted just to get our students really excited about the day of service. We have vendors come out, we have food sponsors and people. We had sausage on a stick. We had health promotions giving out sunscreen and first aid kits. We had a rock climbing wall that was giving out free passes for climbing and things like that. So just really anything you could think of. We were like, let's pump our volunteers with some goodies because they are taking 4 hours out of their Saturday to be here on an early morning to serve the community. So our mission here at Big Event in Texas A&M is really the hope here is through service-oriented activities. We promote campus and community unity. So we're the bridge from the campus, so the students, and also we promote to faculty and staff. They can also volunteer. And connect that to the community. And so we as Big Event act as the bridge basically to say thank you. Thank you for letting us take up a majority of the traffic and the restaurant lines and all of the things that we do, and especially in College Station with 76,000 students. And so it just continues to grow. And so we want to continue to encourage the heart of selfless service, which is one of our Aggie core values. And so we hit on that a lot. We're like, this is a perfect opportunity for you to showcase your core values here at A&M. But it's not a need-based organization. So we don't seek out residents in the community that are specifically needing help, but really any community members. We include nonprofits as well as other community members. There's a lot of old ags in our community that just likes students to come out to their house and just visit with them. Sometimes they'll provide lunch, sometimes they'll provide different entities, like they'll have a pool, or they'll provide food and like all of these things. They're really excited to tell students about it as well. So before we jump in, I have a
Here at Texas A&M, everything we do is big.
The big event exists to connect Aggies with the residents of Bryan and College Station to express our gratitude towards them for enhancing our Aggie experience. We do this through simple acts of service, such as yard work, painting, planting, and so much more.
The most memorable part of the big event for me was getting to know our residents after helping them and having lunch with them and really connecting with them. It made it personal, and that was really important to me.
The Texas A&M core value of selfless service is something that we hold dear as Aggies. It's something that we exemplify together on this one big day. Being able to come together as an Aggie family and hold out a lending hand for families in need is our mission of saying thank you.
Join over 15,000 Aggies as we say thank you to the community this March. We cannot wait to see how you bridge the gap between the campus and the community and make a big difference here in Aggieland.
So you can see it's a very large event. This past year we had, and we'll get into stats in a moment, but I wanted to back up and look at the history of this event. So it originated by a gentleman named Joe Nussbaum. He's an amazing gentleman who was attending A&M, and he decided that he and a few friends were just going to go and clean a cemetery. And so he grabbed his friends and said, let's go. And they picked up some tools on the way, and then they went and did that. And that was in 1982. Since then, our whole organization has expanded nationally. It's actually globally. We have an organization in Pakistan that's doing big event. We used to have one in China, where we've lost contact with the one in China just since COVID and all of those things. But we're still trying to get in contact with our nationwide spread of organizations. So in 1990, we started expanding. So we started expansion packages to help other student leaders across other universities, help them bring this initiative to their campus. Also, we were seeing a lot of Aggies were graduating, and then they were just going straight to another university, and they were like, we've got to bring big event here. So that's been a really cool, unique way that they've continued to enhance our mission even larger and our impact. We hosted our first conference in 2006. We call it the One Big Thanks Conference, and it brings universities across the nation and sometimes globally, usually in the heart of Aggieland. This past year, we went to Virginia Tech. Every year, we kind of rotate it to see which university wants to host it. And that just allows us to really connect the dots between all of the big event student leaders, as well as the big event advisors, and have communications like, what does risk management look like on your event? What does recruitment look like on your event? And just have that brainstorming moment. In 2010, we also had President George Bush attend the kickoff ceremony, so students were really excited about this. We also went worldwide in 2014, as I mentioned. This one actually speaks about Spain, Italy, and Germany. So those are 3 big events located across, and these are students who went to study abroad, and then they wanted to bring this initiative abroad. 2016, we had a record-breaking year. We're hoping we can get back to this maybe in 2026, but we had 22,176 student volunteers serving the community, and it was insane, to say the least. I'm sad to say that COVID kind of gave us a little bit of a dip, as it affected everyone, but definitely we're excited to get back. But we still were able to serve a lot of different areas locally. Additionally, 40 years of big event in 2022. So we just celebrated our 22nd or 42nd, my apologies, 42nd event. And we are just hoping for the continuous growth of this event. So a little bit about our organization structure. So we have 2 advisors. We have 1 primary advisor is what I act as a full-time staff member. It's about 15% of my job, but if it was fully my job, 100%, I would be in love. I would never leave. So that just gives you a little bit of context of what that looks like in a professional staff role. And then we also have a secondary advisor who is usually graduate. This just gives them the opportunity to advise a student government organization, working with a lot of students who are passionate about service. On top of our organization, we have 2 student directors. We have 1 director and 1 assistant director, and they lead a team of 12 executive team members, and they're broken down into development, operations, outreach, programs, and recruitment. Development is really focused on funding, fundraising, all of the events, fundraising, all of the money. They're the people bringing in all the money, and the sponsors and donors. We have a really big sponsor with Pods, as well as Phillips 66. And so a lot of those partnerships really come from this partnership. Operations is tools, all things tools, logistics. And so they work really, really hard with their committee to try, we haven't gotten back to this since 2016, but try to distribute all tools in 26 minutes or 24 minutes, depending on the year. So it used to be 16 minutes, and they give themselves a challenge. The reality is it actually takes about 45 minutes to distribute tools. So one day we have a lot of engineers on our campus, and so they're looking at logistically creating a capstone that they can look at this and figure out a way to more efficiently make this process, which is just such an engineering thing. So that's just, I love it. And then we have a committee team of about 55 members. These are leaders in the organization who are assigned a specific group of staff assistants to lead throughout the community. So, or lead throughout the year. So we have multiple layers of the organization that's really dedicated to providing a lot of opportunities for students to serve and get leadership skills through this organization. And not to mention, it takes an army and a whole army and a half really to put something on like this that's large scale. And so we have 290, I think actually this year we went up to 300 staff assistants. And so that number will continue to grow every year as the need continues to grow. And this was a previous number, but we had 23 student volunteers. Okay. So looking at the yearly timeline, in August, we start recruiting committee. Committee are, like I said before, they're the leaders of the organization who are helping small pods within to create tasks and also to create jobs, to do job checks. The committee doesn't step into jobs checks until the staff has fully completed their portions or their assignments. Committee is like a backbone that basically helps us facilitate all of the job checks. And job checks, let me define that a little bit. It's basically where we go out and assess the job site and make sure that the risks don't outweigh the benefit. And so just looking critically at all entities that exist, whether it be conversations with residents, whether it be images on the walls, for example. We've had a lot of different things that unfortunately we've had to kind of avert away from, but that's just as a risk, a safety precaution for our students. We want to keep them safe on these job sites. And we have a lot of them. So it's never a moment where we're like, oh, we need more or we're looking for more. We usually have an influx and we are not able to serve all of them. And so hopefully we can get back to our pre-COVID numbers so that we can continue to serve those residents really well. So September is when we start recruiting staff. Our staff are only trained to do job site checks. So they are the ones going out into the community, making sure that these residents are feeling supported, communicated to, and just appreciated. And so that's a really cool part of their job. And a lot of people actually will go all the way up the organization. Our student leaders will go all the way up the organization, maybe even serve as an executive leader 1 year, and then they'll go back to staff because they just love the aspect of going and connecting to the community members. I have probably about 25 of folks who've served in committee or in staff previously and just keep coming back as staff because they love connecting with residents. We also, as an organization, do an internal service project. We do one in the fall and then we do one in the spring. This year, we've initiated a new approach to our spring service project, and our hope is to serve all the residents who didn't get served on the day of, whether that be for complications or scheduling errors, or even students not showing up on the day of, which unfortunately sometimes happens. And so we, as an organization, 375 of us, are going to go out and serve those residents to make sure that they get served. In December, we also have a donor gala, which basically is just our big fundraising event. I told them this year that they could not have this event. This was their last year to have this event if they didn't make any money. And so they took me up on that challenge and were able to raise $15,000 from that event. And I can say that that's the first time that event has been successful in 42 years. And so we're doing great. But I'm really excited about that because I think they're changing their way that they look at development, which is great. And January is usually when we have our One Big Thanks conference. And then we have March, where our lovely day of service day happens. So for the day of, our students meet, our staff and committee arrive at 5 a.m. We go to our pods, which are big storage unit containers that get dropped off a few days before our event so that we can put out tool layout, which is basically just where we take all the tools out of the pods and we lay them out where they're in zones so that the distribution process is a little bit more streamlined. And they have breakfast, they review the schedule. This is where they get motivated to go throughout their day and serve. At 8 a.m., volunteers start arriving to Aggie Park, which is our new space for our event. It's right outside of Kyle Field and was intended and created for the purpose of having these large-scale events. So the university really likes to push a big event to use that space because it's just such a great space for the community. Additionally, this is where they get vendors, food, all the things. We usually have a keynote speaker. This past year, it was Coach Mike Elko, who is a recent A&M football coach that was that just received his position. And so the students really loved bringing him and getting him to motivate the team, this team of students to go out. We also have a cannon that goes off at 9:35, and this is really the beginning of the tool distribution process. And so you'll see about 16,000 students walking under the bridge all the way over to a parking lot that's about 10 minutes away to pick up their tools. But they are motivated, they are excited, and they are ready. Okay. And then we've got VIP media job site visits. I also have at 11, and then the students go out and serve the community. 2 p.m. is where tool bring back comes in. And so students just bring all their tools back in their vehicles. And so that's a really fun process to be a part of as well. So this past year, our big event data, 2,250 job sites. These job sites can include nonprofits or residents in the community of Bryan College Station. We had about 16,500 volunteers. We distributed 2,250 tools, and we have about 370 members. So I don't have time to share this video with you, but this is a really cool video that I would love, love, love. If you are interested in knowing what the behind the scenes of this event looks like, this is a really great documentary that Texas A&M put together that just kind of explores what training looks like, what tool distribution looks like, and just really helping our members be equipped for the day of. Just a really cool insight. And I can also share this out with our follow-up in our email. And then lastly, I have additional resources for you. So if you are interested in enhancing your service project, please, please, please either scan the QR code or view this link below. It is a great opportunity, a great resource that has expansion packets about our risk forms, about our waivers, about our liability forms, all of those good logistical legal things that we need in order to support our students holistically in their risks associated with a large-scale event like this. But that is really all for me. I have one more slide. Oh, no, I don't. Thank you so much, y'all. I'll turn it back over to Melissa.
Shelby, thank you. I just had to get into your QR code there so I can check that out in a few minutes. So thank you, and thank you for powering through all the technical issues. So if you have questions, now's your time to submit them to the Q&A. We have a list of questions as well. So when thinking about these projects and varying scales and varying timelines and everything, I think there's two different avenues. There's logistical questions, and then there's relationship building questions. And isn't that kind of what we're all about in these service projects is the relationship building? So Josh, you mentioned right off the bat about mutual benefit. And I think that's what we all strive for. But how do you evaluate mutual benefit in your organization?
So I think one of the things we do from an office perspective, if I'm thinking about our ongoing service learning partnerships, it's to have a feedback loop with those partners and checking in and making sure that students are meeting the needs, that the projects are meeting needs. And we're hearing that everybody's willing to partner again and connect. So we have evaluation methods. We mentioned GivePulse, that like there are built-in features within GivePulse for collecting data and assessment, and to shift it over toward that lens of thinking about whether it's our PSO week of service and our volunteers out at specific sites and hearing about their experience, or the MLK day of service where we're hearing from them as part of that. About the impact of their work and what what they can share with us. And then the other piece, I think Cecile mentioned this, was the involvement of community partners on our planning committee. So it looks a little bit different depending upon the layer, but that lens of having a community partner in the room with us while we're thinking about how we coordinate and plan is essential. So the mutual benefit also comes from one of the things we recommend is going to community partner events and showing up and having those conversations with them and just learning about how you can show up in a meaningful way for them so that your work is being impactful.
So Cecile, when you're planning this with the community, like, what are lessons learned with dealing with the community? What is their perspective on these kinds of outreach efforts, and where are there pitfalls or things that you've learned?
Sure. So what Josh said about having those community partners be a part of the planning process, definitely essential, because they, I think some of our partners are willing to share feedback with us, whether we ask or not. Some we have to really dig it out of them. But I think it was Josh that you mentioned when we were speaking, one example I can think of is years ago, we really logistically thought it was simpler for us to have a less number of event sites and have larger numbers of volunteers at those sites. Some of the feedback, and this was partially, I would say, COVID, and also feedback from some of those sites was like, we can't accommodate these larger projects. It's easier on us to have smaller scale projects, 15 to 25 people, which, as I was listening to Shelby's presentation, accommodating 22,000 students would be quite a challenge if you only have 15 to 20 people at each of those project sites. So I'm curious to hear if she has anything to add to that. But that was some feedback we got. Like we would rather have smaller scale sites on the day of. Two, I think something that we see is challenging for community members is our timeline. When we put out a call for project sites, that's several months before the service day is going to happen. Sometimes they don't know exactly what their needs will be in January, when we're asking them in October. So that can be a challenge for us on the planning side. Like we want to have all this information ready to go, put up into the online system so folks can get all the information they need when they volunteer. But details can change a lot in 3 months. So those are just two examples. Having them along, we try really hard to get involvement from them in the planning process to have that voice. But it can be that can be challenging in itself, getting them to be sort of present in the planning process as opposed to just at the end when they're going to host a project.
Good points. Shelby, a logistical question I see that you answered, and then we'll get back to the next question. Tell us about, students using their own cars. I'm also fascinated with the A&M model of going into individual homes, right? So talk a little bit about that, the practicality of that and the risk management issues.
Absolutely. So we take our students through the PREF model training. PREF model stands for physical risks, reputational risks, emotional risks, facility risk, and financial risks. And so we teach our students to really think through that model when they're going to assess these sites. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, but there are a lot of residents that are not able to be served due to an emotional risk or due to a physical risk, whether it be inappropriate comments that were made on the job site, or whether it be they request only students of a specific race, things like that were like, oh, instant red flag, and we're like, maybe not, because we have the opportunity to kind of pick and choose who we want to serve. And we want to create a safe environment where students are going to go out and be like feeling appreciated and feel like they're doing something to make an impact, instead of feeling like they're service workers that are just like doing cleanup for them. And so that's been some feedback that we've received over the past couple of years. And so we've continued to enhance the ways in which we're diversifying our resident population by providing Spanish tabling opportunities, or even all of our newsletters are being translated to Spanish. We have a section on our website that is focused to Spanish speakers because that's a large population of our community. And usually, specifically in Bryan College Station, is our lower income populations. And so we recognize there is a need there, and we want to help. And so we can help do that by just being more strategic with our marketing or our recruitment. Additionally, to answer the question in the chat, so the question is, are students required to get themselves to their site, or do you provide transportation? So we don't provide transportation. We do ask when the students sign up for the big event that they have the opportunity to select a button that just says, I have a vehicle. And then they also are able to say, I have a large vehicle. Usually right now it says truck, but we're going to change it next year to say large vehicle, because not everyone needs a truck. If you have a large SUV, that also can work. And basically we ask them if you're willing to serve as a job site leader. If they indicate that, then they're available to provide transportation to their group. We will strategically auto-assign groups based on vehicles. And so if there's a group that maybe only has one vehicle, but there's another like extra 5 people that they need to take to the job site, then we'll make sure that we assign multiple vehicles to that group. Additionally, if we have large tools like ladders and large shovels and hose and all the other things that we have that are like really long, we ask that the larger vehicles are able to come and pick up those through tool distribution. And so we'll special match those so that those students are able to take their tools to their site.
Great, that's great. And that matching of students goes back to the mutually beneficial, right? We want this to be a good experience for both sides. Josh, you wanted to answer this question. How can we create a low-cost, high entertainment event with the help of local businesses? What's the best way to advertise? What are the best ways to unite student events and local residents? And how can communication be better to promote events department-wide to engage more of the student body?
Yeah, there's a lot of good questions in
Yeah.
there. So
If
I'll
you could
tackle
answer
it
all those, you'd
if I could
solve
get them
all our
right.
issues, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I will say, and I think you heard Shelby talk a little bit about this, and Cecile mentioned this. We have a sponsorship package. We have a committee dedicated specifically to recruiting funds for the MLK Day of Service. We do some grant requests in addition to providing businesses opportunities. And one of the things, because we have not traditionally, our group has not had a specific bank account. We've just this year started working with our local community foundation to have an account that has the ability for individuals to donate online. We've really streamlined that. So we have been able to get citizens, individuals in the community that want to support the work. Maybe they can show up, maybe they can't show up, maybe they just want their business to be named, or an individual that says, I want to give $50. And that every little bit of that helps us put the day of service on, can pay for t-shirts, supports the breakfast, or those sort of things, which I think leads into the second part of this question, because at its core, these are volunteer sites. Folks can show up and can do the work. It doesn't require a lot of bells and whistles, but where we start to see some capacity for transformative change and bringing these different groups of folks together is at a kickoff event or at a wrap-up event where people from different parts of our community, from our student population to our community members, can come together and they can talk about why they're there, what are they doing, what site are they going to be at, why they're excited, why did you sign up. And our MLK Day of Service, it's a really broad range of sites. Cecile and I initially met, she mentioned working in stormwater. Well, we participated or collaborated on this river cleanup, and it's a bunch of watersheds across our community. And so for our community members, it lets them see that our students, they may be in a course that has a watershed-based or an ecological-based component, or they're just a student that decided they're going to get up and they want to help clean up a stream, and that's a space where they can start to build a relationship and understand that they both care about this community that they live in. So I think our challenge then from there is to think about, how do we capture those interactions and those moments and talk about the relationships that are built from there. And I don't know if Cecile or Shelby want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I will add just one thing. Something else we try really hard to do with specifically the MLK Day of Service is not have one group of volunteers take up an entire project site. So, we are contacted by, all sorts of different student groups, sororities, businesses that want their staff to volunteer, all sorts of groups who ask, can I, reserve spaces at a site, or can you set aside a site for me? And our answer is usually no, because we try really intentionally to have a good mix of both community members, students, people from all segments of the community working alongside one another, which I think is key to what Josh was saying, to have those conversations about, why are you here? That in itself has been a challenge, because we do get so many requests. We've sort of built it into our sponsorship package as an incentive that you are able to reserve a group of spaces for your business if you sponsor at a certain level. And then we sort of make sure that we're putting them at a place that's big enough to accommodate beyond just their group. So that's just one extra thing.
All right, Shelby, our final remarks here.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think a lot of times when Texas A&M, specifically Big Event, promotes or presents their organization, their event, a lot of times people can feel discouraged. And so I don't want at any point for you to feel like we are doing it better or we are doing it big and that means we're doing it great. There is always room for growth. There is always errors that we run into every year. And so I just kind of want to pull the blinds back a little bit, just to know that I think when I was a student leader, so I started out at Stephen F. Austin and as a student director in the big event, and then had to get to Aggieland as soon as possible because I just wanted to be a part of big event. So being able to serve as their advisor, I was able to see all the ins and the outs, which means it's not always pretty, right? It looks pretty on the day of because we work hard yearly or year round to make it happen. And so be okay with the uncomfortableness of starting a new event and not knowing that if it's going to go well or not. That's okay. And we're here to support you. And so feel like I hope you can reach out to us at any point and know that we can help support you through your new initiatives that you're trying on your campus.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap up. Great words of summary, great information. We could go on much longer, but we promised we would finish on time. So thank you very much, Joshua, Shelby, and Cecile, for a wonderful discussion. Thank you, audience members, for submitting your questions. And I hope to see you all at the next Collaborative Communities Conversation in June. Enjoy your day. Thank you.